Hello, algebra students. Today we're going to talk about slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form that we've been talking about is the form of y equals mx plus b. So that is a form of an equation that makes that equation easy to graph, and also to take a graph that's already graphed and put it into equation form. So we're going to work on a few examples. So let's look at this red line right here. So while looking at this equation, we need to be able to figure out what the slope and what the y-intercept is. So usually the easiest one to see is the y-intercept. Remember that this is the x-axis right here, and the up and down is the y-axis. So if you look at the y-axis and you find the point that graph crosses the y-axis, that is the value of the y-intercept, because that graph intercepts the y-axis at that point. So this is our origin here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it passes at positive 4, which means our y-intercept, which the letter B represents the y-intercept, is going to be 4. So it's a positive 4, so I know this equation is going to be y equals, we'll figure out what the m is, mx plus b. Well, we know the b is 4 because it crosses at 4. The next thing we need to look about is the slope, or the m. So we need to find 2 points on this graph. So there's a point, there's a point. So I can figure out the slope between those 2 points by doing rise over run. So from here we're going to do rise. We go up 1, because we're counting here. We're going up 1, 2, 3, 4. So we go up 4, and then we go over 1, 2. So it's a rise of 4, a run of 2. Okay, so a rise of 4 over a run of 2, because it's rise over run. 4 over 2 equals 2. So I know the slope on this equation is 2, and I can put that slope in there for the m. Y equals 2x plus 4 is the equation that goes with this graph. So we're going to do the same thing on this green graph, green line, linear equation. So let's look at the intercept. Right now we start at the 0, and we're going to go down on the y, 1, 2, 3. So it's negative 3 because it crosses at negative 3. So I know the last number is going to be negative 3. And I need to figure out what that slope is. So here's a point, and here's a point. So from here to here, we need to figure out our rise over run. Well, since we read English from left to right, we're going to read math points from left to right. So when we go from this point to this point, our rise is a negative rise because it's going down. And it's going down 1, 2, 3, because it goes from here to here, down 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, over 5. So it's down 3 and over 5. So our slope is negative 3/5 because we come down 3 and we're going to go over 5. So the slope is negative 3/5. Y equals negative 3/5 x minus 3. This orange one down here, here's our y-intercept. We intercept at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 5. And notice our slope, our rise over run. We have no rise. Doesn't go up at all. So our slope is 0. So we would have 0x minus 5. But 0 times x is just 0, so we end up with y equals negative 5. And you'll notice that any linear equation that is a horizontal line will always have the form y equals a number. And any line over here like the blue that is a vertical line that goes up straight up and down will have the form of x equals a number. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice this one does not have a y-intercept because it doesn't cross the y. That's why the form of this equation is going to be different. Also know that the slope of this equation is undefined. It is not 0, it is undefined. The slope of any vertical line is undefined. The slope of any horizontal line is always 0. So this has a slope of 0, this has a slope of undefined. So when you're talking about slopes and equations. Looking at that a little bit more closely, we're going to look at this other line here. Notice when we're doing slope, it's rise over run, and you can use any 2 points anywhere on that graph. Find 2 points, and let's count the rise over the run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We went up 6, and we went over 1, 2, 3, 4, over 4. Up 6 and over 4 reduces to 3/2. You'll notice if we had used 2 different points, let's say I'd use this point and this point, 2 different points, we would go up 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2. You'll notice that this reduced format is the same as this number because the slope never changes. Up 3 and over 2, up 3 and over 2, up 3 and over 2. We'll have each one of those can locate the next point on that graph. This is our rate of change. It's a constant rate of change, which means we have a straight line or a linear line. So remember that M stands for slope, and that slope equals rise over run. Last one here for this video, we notice that this line goes at a negative slant because it goes down. And one way to remember this is if this was your money in a bank account, we want our money to go up over time. So if it's going down over time, that is a negative slope or a negative reaction. In order to find the slope, we need to locate 2 points on here. Doesn't matter which 2 points. There's 2 points. You could have had different points. And we're going to look at rise over run. I already noticed it's going down, so it's going to have a negative slope. So let's start at this point and look. I went down 2, over 2. Well, since I'm going down 2, that's negative 2. And since I'm going over 2 to the right, which is the positive direction, it's positive 2. So rise over run, negative 2 over 2, reduces to negative 1. So that means that my slope is negative 1. What is my intercept here? Where does this cross the y-axis? It crosses the y-axis at negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So that means my b is negative 3. If we know our b and we know our slope, we can write the equation to this line because we know y equals mx plus b is the format. Our slope is negative 1. Our intercept is negative 3. And then we could just simplify. And whenever you have a 1, you don't really need that 1 because remember we talked about the invisible 1. So negative 1x just becomes negative x minus 3. And that's the equation for this linear line.